The Ace of Cups, one of the first all-women rock bands emerging in the mid-'60s, we're in the thick of the San Francisco music scene, and joining me now, Ace of Cups guitarist Denise Kaufman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Carol. It's really an honor to be on Test of Time.
So while I was doing my What's Happened to Denise Kaufman search, I was excited to discover that the Ace of Cups are working on a new album. But before we talk about the new album, I thought it was kind of important to lay some context revealing how monumental this studio recording is. The formation of the Ace of Cups in 1967 was the brainchild of Mary Gannon. What were your thoughts about joining an all-women rock and roll band?
Well, first of all, I would say it was more organic than that. It really just kind of people met each other. Mary Gannon and Marla knew each other, and then they met Diane, and then they met Mary Ellen, and it just sort of happened organically. But when I was the last one to meet up with the other four, and my original thoughts about it were that because I'd played in bands for some time, and I was the only woman, and I'd really never met women who were good players. And so when I first heard that this all-women's band was forming, I thought, well, they probably aren't very good. It was like, it was just such an outlandish notion. I couldn't imagine it. It's the truth. That was more what I felt. It was just like, how can that be? Because I really had never met many women players, especially I met women singers who were great, and seen women singers, but I wasn't, there just weren't any all-women's bands around to look at, and so it was an outlandish notion to me.
Yep, I can understand that. You were playing with a lot of guys that went on to form bigger bands. What was it? It wasn't Blue Cheer, it was...
Moby Grape. The guys that later formed Moby Grape, they had originally come from Seattle, and they were called the Frantics. And then when I joined, we lived in the South San Francisco area, like Belmont, for a while, and we changed our name to the Luminous Marsh Gas. And
Ken Kesey reference.
Yes, exactly. And then we eventually went separate ways, and the keyboard player from that band, Chuck Stakes, or Charlie Schoening, and I and Merlin Wenner, who was my friend who was living with us at the time, all moved up to the Haight-Ashbury. And so, and before that I had played some, not as a regular member of the band, but did record with a band in Berkeley called The Answer, all young guys from Berkeley High School, great musicians.
Yeah, you recorded that single. You were a freshman at Berkeley, and you recorded that single, Boy, What Do You Do Then? And the single was denied airplay by Bill Gavin of the Gavner Report, he said it was too raw, didn't have a pop sound, and women just didn't say things like that. Did you take that as a compliment?
In a way.
Yeah.
Because men were saying things like that, and exactly. I've always been really interested in why, if you change the gender on a song, you just switch the gender from, she says to he says, or you just change it around how it lays for you, how it feels. And I'm sure if a guy had written a song like that, it would have gotten airplay in a minute.
Yeah. Well,
women weren't allowed to talk about sexuality.
Right.
And they certainly were not, talking about, kind of things that song does. Now, of course, it's completely tame. But in those days, it was kind of a radical thing to say.
Right. I mean, except for some early blues, maybe from Ma Rainey or Big Mama Thornton.
Exactly.
And then, they weren't getting airplay either, except for certain radio stations, I guess.
Right.
So the Ace of Cups had a lot of love and support from many musicians in the community, as well as financial support that allowed the band to focus on their craft. And you shared the stage with the Dead and Jimi Hendrix, and you toured with Jefferson Airplane and performed at the Chicago's Cosmic Joy Scout Super Jam in 1969 with a lot of members like Paul Butterfield and Muddy Waters. Yet the Ace of Cups remained the most infamous obscure band of the Bay Area. Several offers were made to record the studio album. What happened?
Well, they really weren't made. That's kind of a...
Is it a myth?
A little bit of it, yeah, it's a little bit of an urban myth, a very small urban myth. They weren't. There was talk, but there were never really any offers. The only real offer we got at the very end was from Fantasy, but at that point, they wanted all of our publishing, and it just wasn't a good offer. But the early offers, there were sort of interest, but no offers. So I think it's an interesting subject that, we didn't have one lead singer. We had a number of singers. We were hippie girls. We played a lot of different genres of music because we all sang and we all pretty much wrote and we all had different musical influences, and we never felt like there was something we couldn't do because it was different than other things that we did. So I think maybe some of those reasons contributed to the fact that record labels looked at us and couldn't quite figure out what to do with us. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody's listening that was with one of those record labels and will just call us up with a different answer.
Well, if the band had secured a record deal early on, do you think that the band's path would have been different?
I do. Yeah, of course, we can never know. But we would have, at the time, we were hoping to get a record deal. But, we were also, by the time of 1968 and 69, started having babies. And even to go to that show you mentioned in Chicago, by then, Marla had Scarlett and Mary Gannon had Talina, and she was nursing Talina. And going away for those few days was really uncomfortable for her. Just being a nursing mom on the road without a baby. Because in those days, unlike today, I think if women have some success and have a family, there might be a little more support for, bringing that extra nanny or nanny to come help with the baby. But in those days, we really didn't have that. And I think even had we had a record deal, we would have really had to negotiate the whole motherhood part. A lot of our friends that got record deals in those days, there's certainly Quicksilver and Sons of Champlin, who were both out of our office, West Pole. They would go on these long tours across the country in vans or in buses. And, we wouldn't have been able to do that with little babies.
Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of pressure from the record labels to tour beyond just your region of like the West Coast or something like that, which might have been more manageable. Yeah, that's unfortunate. See, and there's also this rumor out there that Grunt Records offered you guys a deal, but towards the end. Yeah,
they did, and then it sort of never happened. I mean, there were. I don't know whether Grunt ever. We played one show with them, and that was really at the end. And actually, a couple of my ex-husband played that show. We had a couple of guys that were part of our family that played with us because Mary Ellen had gone by then, and I can't remember whether Marla played that show or not, whether she was gone by then. But Mary Ellen, our lead guitarist, had moved up to the Trinity Alps with her husband Fred, who was the manager of the Sons of Champlin, and with Tim Kaine from the Sons. So they all had a back to the land move. So by the time the Grunt Records offer came, we were not, have the same personnel.
Right.
And so it didn't quite, never got farther than that original show, I think, which was out at the beach,
Yeah. Well, fortunately for us, a collection of field recordings of the Ace of Cups was released in 2003. Who was responsible for getting that material out?
That was Alec Palau, who worked with Ace Records, and the kind of their sub-label that we're on is called Big Beat. And Alec Palau was really our first hero in our recording career, and really letting people around the world who are, searching out this stuff find out about us, because up until Alec created that record for us. People either heard of us or heard us in person, or we were completely invisible.
Mm-hmm.
So Alec used to have, he's a British fellow, great musician himself, wonderful bass player. He plays right now, among others, with Country Joe. But Alec is a scholar and, complete, amazing resource of all things early music of that genre and other genres too. I mean, all American music really from probably the 40s, 50s on. And he wrote to us. I was living in Hawaii when I first heard from Alec, and that was in the 1980s. And he and his friend Judd had a little magazine called Cream Puff Wars, which was a magazine right? No, it's a great name. Chronicling or tracking the Berkeley bands of the 1960s. When I lived in this little valley in Kauai that was basically didn't have television. It was this little remote valley, and got a letter, from someone saying they had a magazine about Berkeley bands in the early 60s. I'm like, that was just, incredible. Like, really? Someone is interested enough about this to have a magazine? It was great. So kind of out of the beginning of that friendship and relationship, some years later, Alec asked us for all of the possible tapes that we had, and then he did some more searching, and out of that came the Ace of Cups, Bad For You, It's Buy It live CD. The thing about that CD is, we didn't have very, very many, not only studio opportunities, we didn't, but even live recording was pretty minimal. And so a lot of the recordings on that project are things that our road manager just taped us so that we could hear, so we could use it as a practice tool to improve. Or, somebody had a tape recorder by one end of the stage, so the balance is kind of strange. And, there weren't, we just didn't have many opportunities to get better quality recordings. So that's what we had. And we were just grateful that we had that and we could share it. And we hope people could kind of listen through the quality and find something to enjoy about it.
Right. Well, I always get a phone call every time I play something from the Ace of Cups, and you've got a lot of fans out there in Radio Land, I think.
Well, that's so wonderful, and we're honored. Yeah.
So I'd like to say, if you're just tuning into the Test of Time, I'm speaking with Ace of Cups guitarist, singer-songwriter Denise Kaufman. So let's talk about the current band. You've got 4 of the 5 members have reunited and are currently working on the studio recording. What was the impetus behind getting together and doing this? Well,
through the years, we have gotten together in various configurations, sometimes 3 of us, sometimes 4 of us, sometimes 5 of us, even sometimes 2 of us, because we've never lost touch, and we've, pretty much stayed connected and close through the, for the last 50 years. But about 6.5 years ago, we got invited to open for Wavy Gravy's 75th birthday at the Craneway Pavilion. And we love Wavy, and it was a benefit for Save a Foundation, which we also love. And so we kind of used that as an impetus to okay, let's get together and play. And we did. That was all 5 of us did that. We played a little show at the Sleeping Lady in Fairfax, and we played the Craneway Pavilion. And after that show, the 3 of us who live in California, which is Mary Ellen Simpson Mercy, who lives up in Weaverville, and Diane Vidlich. Well, Mary Ellen is our lead guitarist. Diane Vidlich is our drummer, and she lives in Novato. And then I'm actually the bass player now. I shifted instruments.
Oh.
I play bass, and I live in Venice, California, and sometimes in Kauai, where we have a family farm. And so the three of us, the California crew, just started gathering together, both sometimes in Southern California and sometimes in Marin, to just play and see what would come of that, because we just missed each other and wanted to play together.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that grew this project. Luckily, we were contacted about just before the time of Wavy's birthday by George Wallace, who owns a little record label out of New York called High Moon Records.
Mm-hmm.
And High Moon basically is a reissue label, and George is passionate about the music of the 60s and has brought to the world some projects that either never saw the light of day or did and then went out of print.
Mm-hmm.
So he brought back Arthur Lee's album Black Beauty, Arthur Lee from Love, and Gene Clark from the Byrds, a solo project of his. And most recently, Terry Dolan, who is a really talented musician from the San Francisco scene, who had a record that was sort of in the vaults and had never been heard, and that record is now out thanks to High Moon Records.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Marvin Gardens, and he's working with Southwood Camel. So George has a lot of projects going, but we're the only band that he was interested in, and he loved our music based on the It's Bad For You But Buy It
Mm-hmm.
record. But he loved our music, but we didn't have a studio album to re-release.
Right.
Right. So at that point, he just said, well, I think you need to go into the studio and make your debut album. So that's what we've been working on now for the last couple of years. And it turns out to be a triple vinyl album. So it's now 36 songs.
Wow.
Yeah. Because, I mean,
You're
why
making
wait,
up for
right?
lost
We're all
time.
in our 70s.
Right. Right.
It's not like, well, we'll release one now, and then a few years later we'll release another. It's like now or never.
Right.
So George has generously backed us and to release all of this with our amazing producer, Dan Shea.
Yeah.
And we've been recording here in Marin County at Laughing Tiger Studios in San Rafael.
Mm-hmm.
And with the help of Ari Rios and Aaron Tadena as engineers and helping with mixing, and Dan Shea as our producer. And it's been an incredible adventure.
How did you select Dan Shea to work on your project? He's worked with a lot of pop artists.
Yeah. Well, we were, at first, George, our record label, had thought we should find a woman producer. He thought that would be cool. And we interviewed a couple of people, but they just weren't the right people for us, although they were very qualified people. But they didn't quite work with what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Diane had played with Dan Shea many years before and had called him really looking for a woman producer.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we sort of couldn't find one, she called back, and he just said, why don't I come over and meet with you? And he did. And sort of everything that we'd been saying we were looking for in a producer is what he said and what he brought. And, because none of us had major studio experience of any kind, we needed someone who was really going to help us walk us through this process and be patient with us and be kind. And Dan is all of those things, as well as just being an incredible talent. And we wanted this record to not be like a nostalgia record.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted it to both, evoke the 60s energy, because that's who we are, but we also wanted it to appeal to, a wide possibility of listeners. And we felt that Dan had all of that. And Dan grew up in Mill Valley and lived down the street from the Cipollina family,
Mm-hmm.
John Cipollina from Quicksilver, and Evelyn Cipollina, who was our Mary Gann and our bass player's piano teacher, and we loved Evelyn and Gino Cipollina a lot. We hung out with them when we could. So Evelyn Cipollina kind of mentored Dan when Dan was a little boy. Like, she would take him to shows when he was 10 years old.
Wow.
And so we felt really connected kind of karmically with Dan Shea.
Yeah.
And I don't know anyone who possibly could have listened to our music with more love and devotion and heart and brought it forward the way Dan does. So we're really grateful.
Mm-hmm. So are you re-recording all of the cuts that are on the It's Bad For You CD?
No, not all of them. I mean, we are doing some of them. Mm-hmm. And because, again, the cuts that were on that CD were just the songs that we happen to have a possible workable tape of. There's other songs that we love that we either had no recordings of or we had really bad recordings of. That we wanted to focus on. Right. For example, there's a song called good. Wait a minute. It feels so good. Feels good. Does it feel good, baby? So that song, we loved that song, but we didn't have any recordings of it. And then many years ago, a fellow who had gone to one of the shows that we did with the Jefferson Airplane in Seattle. Mm-hmm. Kind of when the internet started, he found me and wrote and said, you don't know me, but I came to this show that you played it was in Vancouver with the Airplane. Mm-hmm. And I brought a tape recorder and I was a big Airplane fan, but then I heard you play and I just turned on this tape recorder. And I've been waiting for years to know where to find you so I could send you a CD.
Wow.
So he did. And it's like a terrible quality, as you can imagine.
Right.
But it's the only version we had of that song, and that's like one of our favorite songs from this new project. Mm-hmm. And we've been able to really, play the original bass lines, and anyway. So just having that little hint helped us totally resurrect it. And those songs, it's done in the style of the '60s, but it also has a more contemporary feel, too.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of those that you've re-recorded is Stones.
Right.
What can you tell me about that song?
Well, that song was written by Mary Gannon, mm-hmm. our bass player, except for the bridge, which I contributed to. I think all of us contributed a little to that bridge. That song was Mary's tongue-in-cheek song about people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And Mary was, her background was like kind of theater and Broadway, and she was always really fun on stage. And so she did that song with a lot of attitude. And the original bridge was a little something about the Rolling Stones that mm-hmm. we wrote. Mm-hmm. But then subsequently to when that song was written, we all were at Altamont, but we weren't all together. I was there with my husband, and some of the other band members were with each other or with their friends. But I was at Altamont 5 months pregnant with my husband, and I got hit in the head with a beer bottle and ended up in neurosurgery and almost losing my baby. Mm-hmm. And so we couldn't sing that same bridge anymore. That was sort of a little bit of an ode to the Rolling Stones.
Right.
So we made up a new one. So you'll hear the new one now in the clip that we've given you.
Oh, great.
So the new one is, I don't know if you want me to tell you the words or you just want to hear it.
Why don't you tell us the words, then we'll listen to it.
Sticks and stones may break my bones and bottles may come flying. You can rock it like a Rolling Stone, but baby, I ain't buying.
Yeah, you guys were kind of upset with them for not taking responsibility or apologizing or for the confusion or having hired the Hell's Angels to begin with.
Angels, and all of the horror that happened that day, and not to me it was that we in the Bay Area in those days were used to the people that were putting concerts together, whether it was Bill Graham or Chet Helms, Family Dog, whomever, to hold the community in their hearts and care for the community as part of creating the concert, like creating a safe container.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so no one was, we were blindsided by Altamont.
Right.
No one expected that because we'd never experienced that. We'd only experienced a place that was safe to go and gather.
Right.
And then when I got hurt, there was, I had neurosurgery. I was in the hospital, and people, I guess somebody, the newspapers checked in with the Rolling Stones, said, "Are you going to help with the hospital bills?" And they said yes, and of course that never happened.
Oh.
But even kind of more urgently, when the doctors I finally reached the doctors at Altamont and realized that I had a skull fracture and I was pregnant. They tried to get the Rolling Stones helicopter to airlift me to a hospital, and the Rolling Stones wouldn't allow that.
Oh, bad.
So I,
Yeah,
that's
just
why the change in the bridge of that song.
Right. Well, let's listen to that now.
Okay.
I said the people who live in glass houses should know stones.
Can I talk to you while it's on?
They'll be standing all alone without a house they can call their own. You gotta keep your backyard clean. If you know, I know you know what I mean. I say the grass is always greener on the other side. Oh yeah, glass will break and the walls can tumble down. Woo! You'll be hunting real quick for a broom to push around. But when you're hiding and you're just so fine, I'll be laughing at you when you start sweeping mine. And that sun, that big old sun, will shine it all. Oh yeah, my home is not so clean. I mean, I really must confess. But when I pee neath your rug, ain't nothing there but a dirty old mess.
Wow, that sounds so great. Denise, are you there? Hey, are you there?
Hey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. User error. That sounds great. It's Mary Ellen's on the lead guitar there.
Yeah, Mary Ellen's on lead guitar, and yeah, she's rocking it, huh? And
Yeah.
Diane is singing. That's Diane Vidalich, our drummer, took over the lead on that song from Mary Gannon, and she's doing a rocking job on it. We love it.
And you guys had some guest musicians as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, luckily we've had the most wonderful outpouring of mostly old friends, either people we played with or people who played with people that we played with. And it's been really amazing to share this music with them. So some of the people who are on our project, well, first of all, the first thing we did was we recorded a song, Wavy Gravy's song, Basic Human Needs, with Wavy, because there wasn't a great version of him singing the song. There were versions of other people singing it. And we brought him into the studio, and our producer, Dan, helped create this amazing track around it, and we sang harmony background vocals and brought in a little gospel choir, and then we made a video with Jesse Block, our videographer, who's doing a documentary about us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Wavy's song, Basic Human Needs, and that's the only thing that's thus far released from this project, and that is on YouTube and Vimeo.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Wavy Gravy, Ace of Cups, Basic Human Needs, and it's really a gift to Wavy and to the Seva Foundation.
Sweet.
And if we, once that video was up and that song was recorded, I felt like if that's all we came to Earth to do was to get Magnify Wavy's song, that would be enough.
Right.
'Cause we love that song and we love Wavy.
Well, who have you got on Life in Your Hands? Who's on that?
That's Taj Mahal singing the song Life in Your Hands, which is part of what I call the Thalen Quartet, which is 4 songs on the project around the birth of Mary Gannon's daughter, Thelina, who is named for the Thalen family. Ron and Jay Thalen started the psychedelic shop and were early spokesmen for everything that was going on in San Francisco. And Ron and his wife, Marcia, and their kids lived out in Forest Knolls in Marin County. And behind their house was a little cabin, and that's where Mary Gannon, our bass player, gave birth to her daughter with all of us there. And that was, for the rest of us, our first birth that we ever witnessed. And the songs that came out of that time are Life in Your Hands, this one that Taj is singing, written by Joe Allegra, who was Mary's partner and Thelina's dad. And then song Thelina, which I wrote, We Come to Welcome Thelina, which there's part of it on this clip you'll hear, with a bunch of wonderful children singing with us. Mm-hmm. And then an Irish song that Mary sings, an Irish feeling song with pipes, and called Macushla, that Mary wrote about the meeting Joe and the birth of Thelina and the loss of Mary and Fred's dear son, who died of a congenital heart defect. So we had both birth and passing in our band at that time. Mm. And then the final song of that is also on here. It's Peter Coyote singing the song that he wrote when Ron Thalen passed away some years ago, and it's about it's called As the Rain, and so that whole cycle of songs is about this community that we were part of and wanted to honor and love.
Mm. What does Macushla mean?
Macushla, it turns out, means pulse.
Hmm.
But Mary didn't know that when she wrote. Mary Gannon, she's an Irish girl, of course, by heritage. But that song, the sound just came to her, and maybe she had heard it somewhere, but she didn't know what it meant. She just wrote it, and then it turns out that Dan Shea, who is plays a lot in the Irish music field and produces in that field, knew all about it. So yeah, so he played the uilleann pipes on Macushla, and so it's just Mary's voice in the pipes, and it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Let's listen to that now.
Okay.
Macushla, 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 Maco. Macushla, 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 Maco. I met him in the valley of the moon. I loved him very early, I loved him very soon. A baby was born in the forest of Knolls. That day a song was sung for her to keep her from the cold. Macushla, 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 Maco. Solomon will always be with us. Raven, Shenandoah, and Jade, Dancing Arrow, Ruby, Rosalani, and her sister Chloe. Howdy do good, Tomahawk truck stop.
La la, our baby is born. We come, our baby is born.
Ah, that is beautiful. Makushla. Love that. So let's go to the next cut. This is the one with Taj Mahal on vocals. Life in Your Hands.
Got it.
Let's do that.
Right.
Before too long, there's a baby gonna be born. Before too long, little bitty baby gonna be born.
Life in your hands.
Life in your hands.
Life in your hands.
Life in your hands. Now your daddy's here. And your mama's waiting on you. Your daddy's here. And your mama, she's waiting on you.
Life in your hands.
Life in your hands.
Life in your hands.
Life in your hands.
This is, these last two songs, they're really different than the stuff you were recording back in the 60s, I think.
Well, interesting. I think, again, it's more the stuff that is on that project. I mean, It's Bad For You, But Buy It, because that's all we had. But we did Life in Your Hands. We did it obviously a little differently then, but Life in Your Hands was one of our main song, so.
Well,
I can't hear what is playing just because with the phone thing. But
right.
Did you hear Talina as well, or just Makushla?
We heard Makushla, and then we heard Life in Your Hands. In Makushla, there's the vocals about Talina, right?
No, it's actually the second part of that. Maybe you didn't play the whole track. It morphs into the song Talina.
Oh, okay. I played it I played the whole track, and it had the kids at the end.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And it just shows up as one whole track entitled Makushla on the file that you sent me.
I got it.
So that's why it's a little confusing.
Yeah. So it's actually a segue into, but we didn't do the whole song because we're keeping it short for you. But the end of the song Talina. But Talina was. Of course, Mary and Joe's daughter, who was named, her name came from the word Phelan, right? It was like Selena was, And at the end of the song, which is the part that you did here, we always sang the names of the children that were being born and named, because we thought people were naming people such beautiful names, the children's names. So, like the end, you heard like Jasper Starfire, Phelan, or Raisin Cane, who was Tim Kaine from the Sons of Champlain's son, Raisin Cane. The last name was How Do You Do Good Tomahawk Truck Stop, which was what Wavy and Johanna originally named their little guy because he was born at a truck stop called the Tomahawk Truck Stop. So later he changed his name to Jordan, but we loved his original name as well. So, yeah.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, from my perspective, since I wasn't in San Francisco in the 60s, in fact, I was only 7 when your band formed, And to me, all I have is the it's bad for you, but buy it. So when I hear something that's, completely different to me, it's like for me, it's like it's brand new, And for you guys, it came from that time period. It's just interesting how I think all perceive music differently. Unless, for you, it's all in the same package, and for me, it's like something completely different, than what I'm used to hearing from the Ace of Cups.
Right, and I think that's what, working with a great producer is wonderful too, because you can sort of have different takes on songs.
Mm-hmm.
And a few of these songs are more recent. Of the 36 that are on our project are more recent. Some we've written in the last few years. A few were written maybe 20 years ago, and then the rest, most of them are older songs, sometimes kind of approached in the way that we did them before, and sometimes with a different spin on them. Yeah.
Are you gals gonna do any touring in support of the album? Like at least on the West Coast, you gonna play any live shows?
I think we will. We're sort of just in the home stretch with the album, and then we have to really shift gears into live. But we're looking at some possibilities, and we would like to. We may need unless we did a really stripped-down version of things, we might need a few friends playing with us because we don't have a regular keyboard player in the band now. And I'm on bass, so then we might even want another guitar player. Mm-hmm. But we've had some great people playing with us. I thought maybe I could name a few of the people that are on the project with us.
Sure, go ahead.
So, like, singing lead is with us. Beside Taj is Buffy St. Marie, Jackson Brown, Bob Weir. Let's see, who else so far? I think that and Peter Coyote, who we're going to listen to, and of course Wavy. We also have some great players. Jorma Kaukonen from the Airplane and Hot Tuna, and now Jack
Jorma.
Cassidy. Jorma's playing, and Jack Cassidy called us. He's now set up to come in.
Mm-hmm.
We have Steve Kimmock, Kenny Emerson. We have Melvin Seals and Pete Sears. Let's see. David Grisman on mandolin. And then we have a few people that are scheduled to come in. The Escovedos, some of the Escovedos are coming in to help us on one track. Oh, we have one track that is a more recent track, a song that I wrote called Jaima, that Bakiti Kumalo is playing on, who is the bass player from the Paul Simon Graceland album.
Oh, yeah. So it'll give you a different sound,
yeah.
probably for that
cut.
cut.
Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah.
So let's hear the cut that Peter Coyote's singing on. It's As the Rain, right?
And it's about Ron Palin's passing. Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
My friend and companion went out to go walking. He didn't wear his shoes, he didn't carry his cane. He passed through the gate on the day the plums blossomed. He said, don't you wait up, I'll be back as the rain. The tobacco smoke's clear and the wine glass is broken. The ashes are cold where there once was a flame. Outside in the green hills, a wild bird is calling, singing, don't you wake up, I'll be back as the rain. So dust off the keys of the upright piano, slap tambourines while the saxophone blows. The blossoms don't mourn in the ices of winter. We don't mourn for a man who lived life as he chose.
You know, Peter Coyote has now probably done everything, right?
Right. You know, for us, because we go back with Coyote, I mean, we have played music with him, and Mary Gannon lived at his commune at Olima, and we played his song, the prison song, at San Quentin Prison when we played there to a prison yard full of men and sang his amazing song, "We All Do Time." So we go back with Peter a long ways, and he's a total brother of ours. It's really an honor to have him sing this song on our project, and we love Peter and we love the Thalen, so it was perfect.
What can you tell me about Dressed in Black? It's kind of a bluesy tune.
Yeah, Dressed in Black is a kind of an evolved version of a song Mary Ellen wrote a long time ago. At the time, she was kind of had a little crush on Dickie from the band Blue Cheer, and so she wrote it, I think, with him in mind. And this version of it that she's singing with Diane kind of doubling lead vocal with her, it's kind of an Everly Brothers style, two lead voices. And the guitar solos are both Mary and Steve Kimmock. And one of the lines that she wrote then, but we particularly love it now, is I used to love you, baby, but you've been putting my body down.
Okay, let's listen to this clip.
So, enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've been hearing lately, baby, that you're all dressed up in black. I've been hearing lately, baby, that you're all dressed up in black. Tell me, how does it feel on your way down? I'm a diamond, baby, but you treat me like a stone. I'm a diamond, baby, but you treat me like a stone. So I'm on my way, leaving well enough alone. They said that you were changing, but I didn't see it coming around. I used to love you, baby, but you've been putting my body down.
So what kind of format are you gals gonna release the project in?
I think all formats. We will have CDs, but we're also doing vinyl, the triple vinyl album,
Oh, great.
and then it'll be online, of course, as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, just about a few more minutes. I still have a gazillion questions to ask, but I wanted to say that you were arrested during the free speech movement in Berkeley.
All right.
And it seems like currently the issue of protecting free speech is front and center again now in our country. And
Right.
do you, about whether there should be filters on free speech, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a deep question. I think that speech that crosses over into urging violence then crosses the line of what's not okay. And I think what happened in Charlottesville was not an issue of free speech when people, come together with that much hate and rhetoric of violence and ready to commit violence that is not doesn't need to be protected. That needs to be prevented.
Right. Well, it's an interesting topic.
It sure is.
In this day,
it's worth more. We don't have the time to go into it, but it's something I would welcome all chances to really talk about that in depth.
Right. Well, we should do this again sometime, I think. And
I would love to.
If
we have about 30 more songs we could share with you.
Well, we can do that again. When do you anticipate that the album will be finished? It kind of moving a little bit.
It did, partly because we've got guests that want to come on, and we're just at this point, 50 years later, we're not going to give ourselves a deadline and make it any less amazing than we really want it to be. So I think it's going to be spring 2018 now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we've never shared any of these tracks publicly till this day. So
right.
It was when you wrote to me, and I just felt like you and Test of Time be the perfect place to at least come out with some of this work and reach out to people. And so I really am grateful, we all are, that you've been playing our first CD for all these years, and so we're really happy to share the new work with you.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about it, and was honored that you wanted to preview it here on this show for the first time. So
yeah,
and I hope that the band comes down this way to Santa Cruz when you start performing and traveling around a little bit, that we can have the whole group here in the studio and talk some more.
That. The famous studio in the Redwoods, right?
That's right, the little cabin in the Redwoods. So
I went to camp in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Yeah.
For 6 summers, and lived under the stars and outside under those redwoods close by you. So that makes my heart sing.
It's a very special place. Yeah. Well, I'm so excited that we had a chance to talk, and thank you so much for joining me on the Test of Time. And we'll be staying in touch now. I'll be keeping track of when the CD's coming out, and we'll talk again sometime, because I have another page of questions for you, and we'll just have to set up another time. So
I'd love to. I'd love to do that.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay. All right. Bye, Denise.
Thanks to everybody who's listening.
All right. Bye.
Bye.